objected to that aid, threatening a cutoff unless Russia stops meddling in its neighbors' affairs. So let me say that again. As early as the 1990s, I was on record as laser-focused on Russia's meddling beyond its borders and making sure the Russians were held accountable. And Mr. President, I ask consent this article be placed in the record.
Without objection.
On the other end of the Clinton administration, I used hearings to grill Democratic officials who were soft on President Yeltsin and optimistic about President-elect Putin. I didn't share Democrats' faith that Putin would be our friend. I ask consent that two excerpts of my committee statement from April 4, 2000, calling for a tougher stance on Russia's foreign meddling and expressing skepticism about Vladimir Putin appear at this point.
Without objection.
Regardless of who is in the White House, regardless of which way the political winds were blowing, I have consistently treated Russia like the threat that it is. Even under a Republican administration, I spoke out when I was afraid the U.S. wasn't doing enough to stop the erosion of democracy and rule of law in Russia. A conference report that I co-authored in December 2003 stated, the managers remain gravely concerned with the deterioration and systematic dismantling of democracy and the rule of law in Russia. We pushed President Bush's administration, a Republican administration, to do more. And of course, I helped lead the charge against the Obama administration's completely feckless Russia policies. President Obama mocked his 2012 opponent for taking Russia too seriously. His administration sought a naive reset with the Kremlin. And for 8 years, I helped lead the charge against that weakness. In 2010, I stood with John McCain and John Kyle to oppose the New START Treaty, a watered-down placeholder for the sort of tough stance we knew was necessary. As Vladimir Putin was building up his missile arsenal, we even had to push President Obama to commit to deploying capable missile defenses to Europe. In 2012, I firmly supported sweeping legislation to authorize heavy sanctions following the killing of Sergei Magnitsky in a Russian prison. The Obama administration flinched and tried to tiptoe around our legislation to avoid messing up their charm offensive, but we backed them into a corner and the president signed the bill into law. In 2014, I and other Republicans constantly pressed President Obama to get tougher on Russia with respect to Putin's aggression in Ukraine. So, Mr. President, I ask consent that the news article dated March 4, 2014, entitled McConnell, Obama's passive foreign policy is a mistake, appear in the record.
Without objection.
And since 2017, I've continued reminding everyone that Putin is not our friend, that Russia is going to continue trying to meddle, that we need a comprehensive strategy to contest Russian aggression, that alliances like NATO are critical for standing up to our adversaries. So once more, for good measure, Mr. President, I ask consent that the news article dated August 15, 2018, entitled U.S. Senate Top Republican Likens Russia to Old Soviet Union, be included in the record.
Without objection.
So, Mr. President, I don't normally take the time to respond to critics in the media when they have no clue what they're talking about. But this modern-day McCarthyism is toxic and damaging because of the way it warps our entire public discourse. Facts matter. Details matter. History matters. And if our nation is losing its ability to debate public policy without screaming about treason, that really matters. In the middle of the 20th century, the original McCarthyism hurt America's strength and diminished our standing in the Cold War by dividing us against ourselves and letting lies, innuendo, and baseless accusations crowd out reasonable politics. The frenetic, politicized witch hunt distracted from legitimate efforts to contest the Soviet Union, including more sober efforts to root out real Soviet agents in our midst. In short, McCarthyism did the Russians' work for them. McCarthyism did the work for the Russians. Now, here we are in 2019. Again, Putin and the Russians seek to provoke fear and division in our country, to undermine faith in our institutions, to exacerbate our political differences until we tear ourselves apart. And once again, it seems there are some who blindly take the bait. American pundits calling an American official treasonous because of a policy disagreement. If anything is an asset to the Russians, it is disgusting behavior like that.